Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and today or tonight we're going to have a very fascinating discussion. It's a roundtable discussion with Clif High and Paladin and myself, and we're going to be talking about cryptocurrencies, sort of a hot topic for the days, and the future. So it's going to pretty much be a wide-ranging discussion, and I do encourage the people in the chat to formulate good questions and put them in all caps, if you don't mind, and that will help the discussion along so that we know what areas concern you and what areas you want to hear about. So I'm very pleased to have both Paladin and Clif High on my show tonight, and let me see if I can bring them on the screen. As it happens, Paladin does not use a camera. The reason for that is that he is a private investigator and he is not supposed to be showing his face, if I understand it correctly, and he can maybe clarify that. And I have these bios and they're on my website, so you can take a look at them. Clif High, of course, is the person who has a patent on what he calls, he is in charge of this Webbot software project. And it looks like it was built, if I understand it, in 1997. It captures, I don't know if this is actually about that or not, but the Webbot project has been going for quite a long time and has been predicting, in some ways it's a prediction of behavior software based on language that it gathers on the internet from humans, and maybe from AI as well. That's a question we're going to ask with regard to cryptocurrency as well. Paladin is a forensic financial investigator. He's a licensed PI, as I mentioned, and he is a key member of what is called the White Hats at whitehatsreport.com. There are other groups that call themselves White Hats, and so it's important not to make a confusion between the various groups, but this particular group, I believe, was one of the first to come out under that moniker. So anyway, welcome, guys. Say hello to everybody, listening.
Hello.
Okay, and Paladin? Hello?
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is, that's a very sketchy bio that I was giving there. So why don't we start with you, Clif, and why don't you give yourself a short introduction, describe the state of the Webbot now, and anything else you'd like to say about yourself before we get going.
Started the project in '93 conceptually. I had the first code running in '97. Took me a year to do the first data run. It's not patented. It's a proprietary mechanism. My patent is for the software called Vortex, which actually allows you to read up to 2,000 words per minute from computer screens. No longer supported or sold since they went to basically the 1080i high intensity radiation screens in about 2003 or so. Other than that, the current state of the project at the moment is that I'm no longer doing the Alta reports, and I'm concentrating the predictive linguistics power of the project entirely into cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies are software I've been coding since 1979, so I understand this world, and the fit between the predictive linguistics and cryptocurrencies is very good, and has been for the past couple of years, as it's all sort of segueing in around particular kinds of emotionally intense language. The Webbot project, essentially, I aggregate vast numbers of words off the internet. They go into a thing I call the emotional reduction engine, and what it does is it assigns a numeric value to words in a particular context that relates to their emotionality that's in that language. And then we look for fuzzy set theory juxtapositions between certain descriptors, nouns, and that kind of thing, and very hot emotional words, such that we end up with a bubble of words that are related emotionally and temporally, from which we make predictions. And it's been going basically since '97, so this will be our 20th year of operation here. And it's a very exciting time with all the cryptocurrency stuff blowing out right now. I've been in Bitcoin since 2011. Read the white paper in 2009, almost wrote some mining software, got distracted by real life, popped back in, and have been in cryptos through the big crashes and so on. From my perspective, cryptocurrency is all about the death of the dollar and everything flowing into it. And then just as an aside, before we can even think about speaking about AI, it's got to be defined. We need to, you and I need to discuss just exactly what we're talking about there. And that's basically where I'm at. I'm just a guy who understands software pretty well, and happen to live long enough for that to be a useful talent at this point.
Okay, very good. What I wanted to ask you, Cliff, you know, I interviewed you a very long time ago, right when you kind of hit the scene, I think. And I think I was one of the first, actually. It was on my radio show, and I don't even know, a lot of those radio shows they disappeared off our server, very unfortunately. So I'm not sure if I still have it on my server or not. But if I do, it's on the Project Camelot website, so people can do a search under your name and maybe find it. But at any rate, I wanted to ask you is, didn't you have a partner in the early days? And do you still have a partner in this sort of Webbot?
I had a fellow friend of mine by the name of George Ure, who was doing the PR for it, okay, and was releasing information from the project before I set up a website. I didn't know where it was going. I was messing around with it. I contacted him because he had a website on economics. My data sets were focused on economics. I made some predictions he found interesting, and for a while he was the face and the voice of it. Okay, this was a time when it was dangerous to be messing about in certain technologies. I did not know if my technology was in that category. And then 2001 comes along. The very first internet famous prediction I made was in June 2011 or 2001, and it said 85 days, within the next 85 days, we were going to have this occurrence, which turned out to be the attack on the Twin Towers and all of that manifestation, right? So it forecasted 85 days out. I actually thought it would happen early in July, but I had my numeric scale reversed in terms of time, and I didn't recognize that until it actually occurred. Then I went back and flopped the scale back the other way, and everything from that point on started to roll and line up a little bit better. George and I had a parting of the ways. He was unhappy with some of he wasn't doing any of the coding and had no influence that way. He was strictly doing all of the PR and was the front part of it. We had a parting of the ways in 2005, and it came down to this basically. He had this idea as an echo of the 1930s that we would go into a depression, and from that depression would spring a revitalized USA based around a new form of communications technology. That every time these things happen, he said, we always get into new kind of communications technology. And the problem was that the data sets agreed with it. And so we were simpatico on that point, but around 2005, there were the first hints of the beginning of digital currencies. This is before the white paper that was released that cured the double spend problem. It was released by Satoshi Nakamoto in 2009, I believe. Maybe it was 2008. So in those 3 years, George and I had a split over this, and he went to work with another project that was doing predictive kind of stuff based on dreams and prescient visions and so on. I don't know where that other project is. His thing was our positions were exacerbated when he hardened against cryptocurrencies, and he made famously a statement in 2013 that, after what was known as the Mt. Gox crash, that all the cryptocurrency exchanges would be failures and closed in 3 months. And at that point, I think Bitcoin had crashed down. I'm unsure of the exact number, but it crashed a huge amount, down to say $110 or something like that. And then it went flat for 2 years as the industry recovered from the Mt. Gox debacle. But even then, I knew that the data was continually saying this was it, this was it. And what George failed to recognize was Bitcoin is a communications technology. it's more than just a currency. It's all about the transaction and the communication between people and a trust in an environment where you can't trust anyone. And it removes trust from the equation. That's why cryptocurrencies are the perfect vehicle for now. And that's also why I know that we're not dealing with a government plot, you know, that kind of thing. All right, it's not a deep state trying to take over, although the deep state is trying to get in on it and may indeed have, well, the deep state did work on the hash algorithms, and some smart people took these hashing algorithms and used them inside Bitcoin. This is where we are today. So, you know, from $100 to it's over $7,000 at the moment.
Okay, I think this is an uninvited guest. Sorry about that. I actually have to lock the room. Not sure what's going on here. Paladin, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, there's something strange going on here. You know, par for the course. So
you forget to lock the door?
Well, yeah, sort of, but it's supposed to always be possible to lock and unlock it, and suddenly it's gone. So I don't know what's happening here.
Maybe someone doesn't want us talking about this.
Someone seems to have, this happened to me one other time. It looks like they took over the room. All right. At any rate, we're just going to I do have a means to kick people out if that happens. I don't know what's going on here. At any rate, thank you for that, Cliff. That's a very good explanation, and I appreciate that. Paladin, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself, to explain why you're not on camera, and just your bio is, as I said, on my projectcamelotportal.com website. But for those who don't know who you are, can you give yourself a short rundown?
Okay. I have a background in accounting and finance. I have a Bachelor of Science in Accounting, went into the corporate world for 5 years, realized that wasn't someplace that I wanted to be. So I went into private practice, became a private investigator, and have been for 30 years, licensed in 2 states, am recognized court expert for forensic accounting, have testified in court regarding those as an expert witness. I've done backgrounds on police officers. I've done a lot of financial fraud audits. A lot of them have to do with the trading programs, which is a subject I know Carrie likes to get into. Surveillance, asset searches, skip tracing, everything just about. In the financial world, frauds, embezzlement, stock manipulation, you know, various investigations regarding all kinds of fraud. I've worked for both the private sector, the public sector, government, law enforcement, have provided information to the feds, the IRS, CID, on a few cases that we were working collaterally, also with the FBI. Had an uncle in the FBI, know several CIA guys. So anyway, that's about all I want to say about all of that. I'm still active. I do investigations where I work undercover in various capacities, which is the main reason why I don't want to show my face.
Okay, very good. So at this time, the subject is cryptocurrencies. What I'd like to do is start out with talking about how you see it, because first of all, I'm going to give the floor to Cliff, because Cliff, you are sort of getting notorious for making, I guess, some kind of predictions or whatever. I'm not sure what you're calling it. Your sort of analysis of cryptocurrencies, giving people heads up on various things related to that. And so can you describe what it is you're doing at this time in a more exploratory way, but also if you can explain why is it you are putting your confidence in cryptocurrencies and how you see, this is rather long-winded, but how you see the future. So it's kind of gives you the floor for this area.
Sure. So let's start with the last part of that first, and the way I see the future for this is, and it's what gives me confidence, is the death of the dollar. Okay, the dollar's been in existence since 1913. It has maybe 1 cent left in purchasing power. Petrodollar is dying as it's abandoned all around the planet. Our provinces like Venezuela and all these others are going through chaos as the dollar that they were pegged to has lost its purchasing power. Their currencies are dying. So there's all this stuff in the world that tells me the dollar is dying. Up until about 2005, it seemed quite convincing that the way that the data was discussing everything, that we were going into a gold and silver world. That made no sense then, and still makes no sense, because in our since World War II, we've doubled our population. We've doubled the population globally since World War II, due entirely to debt, to the issuance of debt that made people feel a wealth effect, that made them go ahead and have kids now rather than delay, and so on. And so in this 7 billion plus person world, we can't exchange gold and silver coins. It's not feasible. And it also instantly destroys international trade, because trying to settle an international trade where you actually had to move metals is what makes pirates rich, and no one would take the risk. And then it gets you back into some kind of letters of marque or tradability, such as were evolved in the 1800s, which leads you back to yet another currency act and the approach to developing some kind of a currency where you don't have to put your gold and silver at risk. Plus, there's not enough gold to go around above ground officially in the mines or in the mints. And that would, I think there'd be 4 billion ounces of gold, and so 3 billion humans wouldn't have gold. Silver doesn't work because we need it as an industrial metal. And currency, there's difference between money and currency. And money is perhaps best defined as a store of wealth. Currency is best defined as an exchange of energy. And that energy could be wealth in this case. And so you can have, and money without currency does you no good, and currency without money isn't accepted. So it's got to serve both purposes, right? And so having vast quantities of money like King Midas leads to nothing. But yet you need to be able to distribute your wealth, your money, in a currency form that actually gains you something. And so seeing the dollar die, I even as early as year 2000, starting to run some of the data sets then, it was like, okay, things are going to get really wonky. It's going to be a hellacious world. We're really facing a Mad Max kind of a future. Our data sets as early as 2003, we're talking about $600 silver. And of course, at that time, I conceived of that as the very brief transition that would lead us into that Mad Max world. And so, because under those conditions where the dollar system fails and paper currencies have failed, look at Venezuela, magnify that over most of the Northern Hemisphere, absent Russia, and think of the chaos that kind of world is going to create. No more just-in-time delivery system, no more deliveries of any kind, because no one's accepting money or credit to do the work, to get the oil, to put it into a tanker, to put the goods on that tanker, to ship it over to you. And so something has to be there to lubricate all of this. If it's gold and silver, we're really screwed, because you can't move gold and silver fast enough. Plus, we've burned up most of the silver, so to speak, by putting it in cell phones, the monitors, the microphones, the cameras, and everything else we're using right at this moment. And so the gold and silver world was a very dire kind of as monetary, it was kind of a dire future. And so all through that period of time from 2003 until the manifestation of the network effect in Bitcoin in early 2013, we were looking at a very grim future. And then Satoshi Nakamoto released a white paper. It was debated for a year. People wrote code about it and started mining coins. Satoshi mined the Genesis block, the first coins out of the system. It was a brilliant idea, conceptualization of the whole thing. Other people bought on to the idea. They started going out and using Bitcoin and making more of them and this kind of thing. 2013, it got the network effect. I can tell this from my data. So I knew from 2013 onward that Bitcoin had what I called long legs that would go far into the future that we were allowed. Then around 2015, it became evident that Bitcoin and the altcoins, as they are called, the clones, the copies of Bitcoin, because it's software, write once, copy many is the rule in software. But in 2015, it became quite clear that here was a chance. Okay, here was a chance to avoid the Mad Max future. If things worked out, universe may have provided us, in my way of thinking, an opportunity to use software as currency and money, and merge the two in a way that had never ever existed before, and blend it with secure, trustless communication. And so I thought, okay, if we can get enough of the wealth out of the dollar system and into the cryptocurrency world before the dollar system goes bluey, we can make do for a while with the developing cryptocurrency world to replace the dollar world while we grow into the future. We don't have to go Mad Max. It means gold and silver have to be relegated to what they are, metals. Now, gold can still be used as a store of value, but we need silver even more now because we need to get more high tech, not less so. Because we're going to get more of these things going, connect more of these schemes together, these ideas, and we're going to need more silver to make more computers, et cetera, et cetera. So the $600 future for silver is still in the data, all based on the idea of silver as an industrial metal, not as monetary. So in pre-cryptocurrency world, the only way to conceive of silver was basically as a primary monetary metal, not primary industrial. But over the subsequent years, from 2008 onward, the role of silver within the emotional sets of the data has shifted to where all we really see anymore is its use as an industrial product. And it has some unique characteristics that way for all these really high-tech things that we haven't even seen yet. And so as more of the disclosure part of all of this comes out, we're going to see silver go rising in US dollar terms, but it will never catch the cryptocurrency world. It can't. The reason it can't is we have the largest possible amount of dollars this planet has ever seen. We're saturated with them. And the wealth that is represented there is so huge that it's going to be squeezed into something that could accommodate it, which is cryptos, because cryptocurrencies can grow and they can keep growing and they can double and they can fork. And we can just go on, and we can suck all of that wealth out of the dollar system and into something that's healthy. Now, so this is why I have confidence on it in terms of cryptocurrencies, because of its appearance when it appeared and what it does in the grand scheme of things. Now I have other confidence because I can read code. And so I see that there's, it's all open source. So you can't, there's like people running around saying, blah, 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 NSA has got a backdoor and they can come in and suck out all your coins. And it's like, bullshit, people. You can read this. This is open source code. There's no backdoor in there. Other people say, well, blah, blah, blah. They've got backdoors into the Windows machines. Yeah, sure they do. But big deal. None of the miners are running Windows machines. They're not running Windows OS. So the blockchain doesn't run on Windows, Windows boxes. And so there's all this stuff out there we call FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt that's being strewn around. But I have a great deal of confidence. I see this as the burgeoning breakout into sci-fi world, that we're going to have, floating cars and all of this kind of stuff in a few years, anti-gravity, all of that sort of thing. We need more silver for that. People will be selling their coins into the industrial machine that will use silver to make all of these cool devices and so on, as we try and dig ourselves out of the hole that the ruling elites have got us in from 400 years of abuse or 1,000 years of abuse of humanity. And the cryptocurrencies are really cool because they're trustless. They're engineered such that you don't have to trust anybody. The system is basically the trust you need to you put your trust into the code, into the cryptocurrency itself, and you don't have to worry about trust with someone else. Now, in terms of what I'm doing with the cryptos, because of the juxtaposition of my technology and the fact that the cryptos are software, basically, and because I understand where people talk about software, GitHub, Slack, all of these places, my data sets had sucked down all that data for a long time. And so my system of predictive linguistics was able to build very tightly congruent and coherent profiles of the words associated with certain specific kinds of cryptocurrencies. And so I was able to make some remarkably good prescient calls on the cryptos. So at one point, I think it was in like maybe March or something, it was probably it seems like forever because in crypto world time is compressed, but it's probably only like March of 2016, maybe it's 2015. My data sets told me about this weird little thing that Bitcoin was going to do. It was going to go up through $408, and it had been, when it told me this stuff, Bitcoin was around $200, maybe $225, something like that. Nobody was paying attention to it. And so along comes the data and says it's going to go up to 408, and it's going to do this weird looping between 408 and 428. It's going to do it 3 times, and then it'll be done with that and move on. And so I knew that whenever this certain pattern would appear, there we would go. And it didn't really give me some hints as to the time frame that would occur in. I was off by about 40 or 50 days. So it took a little bit longer than I'd anticipated. But sure enough, Bitcoin did this loop between 408 and 428. And from that point on, I was able to really zero in on, because of my system includes and is based upon a backward refining of the data. So in other words, I make a forecast. It's going to do X, Y, and Z. If it does it and that language appears, I can then go calculate the time from the data showing up until the time within my system, and then the time that the language actually showed up, and adjust my ability to make predictions as the lexicon is tuned, so to speak, relative to time. So that's what I was able to do. And then the next set of predictions led to something almost as spectacular. And then we've had some pretty good predictions on Bitcoin since then. And so here we are. The latest and greatest couple of predictions are that we should see 10,000 before the end of the year. That's a no-brainer. And we should see 13,880 by the end of February. And then we blow out, and then we really get moving, because the larger scheme of things is that more money piles into cryptocurrencies. Now, here's the thing about all of this. This is an interesting world we're living in, because cryptocurrencies are described as virtual currencies. To people who are in the trade, what's important is the cryptography. That's why we call them cryptos. But it's also software. Software goes through systems of a particular type of adoption, particular rate of adoption. It's quantifiable. You can slice and dice it any number of ways. Lots of professors have got tenure based on doing analysis on how software and new things go in through different cultures. And if we look at the planet as a whole, and we can see this with cell phones. And cell phones were early adopter. I had one in the 80s, and I had to lug along a battery pack for it. And I was an innovator, and it was because I required it for my business, because the people I worked for, Microsoft and this kind of thing, wanted to be able to talk to me while I was in the car. A staggering idea. Nowadays, of course, everybody's got a phone, but there was a particular point at which all of a sudden, the 1 to 3% of the innovators, all of a sudden it started getting into mainstream. And then it was like there were just, Apple arose and the iPhones, and the rate of sales just started really escalating until it plateaued off. And what occurred was, the humanity was basically adopting the technology, and we went from innovators to early adopters to mainstream. Well, right now, in my way of thinking, we're about to cross the point from innovators into early adopters of cryptocurrencies. So basically, it's kind of like saying, you ain't seen nothing yet. Wait until we get it to March of next year, when the dollar has taken a couple of more precipitous hits, things are a lot more chaotic, and people will be fleeing to cryptocurrencies for safety. And the reason you can do that is that you can put gold in your pocket, but can you get a pocket full of gold through the TSA? No. But I could put gold into Bitcoin. I could then put Bitcoin in a wallet, memorize the addresses and everything of the wallet, destroy the PC and the hard drive, get on a plane, because TSA isn't going to be able to see the numbers in my head, and then I could fly anywhere I wanted to, land, download another one of those wallets, put that number in there, and reconstitute my Bitcoin, because it doesn't go anywhere. It stays on the blockchain. And the blockchain, I can get into the technical stuff if you really care to know about what the blockchain is and that kind of thing. But
okay, well, at this point, what I'd like to do, this is great, Cliff, and it's great, like a short sort of history of all of it. and your own sort of actions within there. But what I want to do is give Paladin a chance to sort of do the same thing you're doing here from his own point of view. And I do want to say, as sort of, I guess, before anything else goes on, I just want to say that these that we do have differing opinions here, and that's why this is going to be an interesting show. We're not all on the same page. I'm certainly very interested in the crypto, and I have a lot of very specific questions that I want to get to, but we're not. I want to, you know, give each of you a chance to bring your sort of points of view forward. So, do you feel that you kind of have said enough here that we can give Paladin a chance to step up and bring his own point of view, which is going to be, I think, somewhat different, and see where we go from here, and then we'll really dig in a lot more. So, Paladin, are you there, and do you want to step forward?
Sure. Thanks for that, Cliff. Every time you talk about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and everything, I get an education. So, and you know, interestingly, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago, Carrie, we did a interview on Bitcoin, and you know, at that, I mean, I don't remember everything I said, but I know at that point I was kind of excited about it, only because it was a challenge to the powers that be. And anything that's a challenge to them is, you know, in my mind, a good thing. So having said all that, you know, there's a lot of things about this that I have, I don't know if I want to say issues, but I'm a little concerned that at some point in time, the powers that be, the banking cartel, if you will, that's probably who this threatens the most, although it does filter down to other levels. But I think the banking cartel is going to take steps to either curtail this, crash it, or I don't know if they're going to take it over. I'm not sure if there's
they're buying, sorry to dispute that, but they're buying it right now. They've got their own coin called Ripple XRP. They've been teaching each other about blockchain for about 3 years.
Okay, I appreciate that, Cliff, and absolutely that's correct. But what I want to do is just give Paladin the floor for a while before you, you know, because he's going to say a lot of things that you're going to take issue with, I imagine. I'm just guessing. And I think I could probably say some things you'd probably take issue with as well. I'm also got, you know, like I say, lots of questions. So I'm going to give you a chance. Don't worry. You know, you're each going to get your turn to sort of say your piece, and then we're going to move on from there, and we're going to dig down deeper. So Paladin, do you want to continue with, you know?
Sure. So I guess I take a sort of a macro or a general view of this, and I see that it is a direct attack on the banking cartel. And I'm more familiar than I'd like to be on what their tactics are and how they work and what they're willing to do to keep their control over the financial system, which they've had for hundreds of years. So I guess I don't see them sort of going away very easily, very quickly, or anytime soon. So there's a few things. I mean, I guess I can see where regulations, they can regulate this out to a certain degree by taking various steps. You know, I guess anything like this, and they're gonna, by regulations, I'm talking about they can do their tax thing. They can say, you know, they can use any kind of reason they want, money laundering, fraud, we're not collecting enough taxes, and all these kinds of things. In addition to, they're not able to collect their fees like they can when they use, you know, when we use their services in the bank. And they also, you know, we put our money in the bank and they loan it out 10 times and they make money off of it and all those kinds of things. So there's a lot of reasons why they wouldn't want this to come into play. And I just wonder, you know, what kind of safeguards Bitcoin or the cryptocurrencies in general have built into them. And I understand there are, I don't know, something like 1,000 or 1,100 different cryptocurrencies. I'm not sure about that, but I guess there's a lot more than what I thought. As I understand it, the blockchain technology is solid. And, you know, that's one area that I see going into the future that can do, and I think you mentioned this earlier, Cliff, that it can do a lot of things besides just the cryptocurrencies. I also think it's interesting. I looked this up. I looked up the tax code, and the IRS tax code, so not surprisingly, does not treat cryptos, the currencies, as actual currencies. They basically treat them as I think the word is product. I think essentially means they're treating them as a security, like a stock. So that tells me that sometime down the road, they're going to do something to get them out of the picture. You know, I don't know what, but there's several ways that they can do this through regulations. Also, there's a question that I guess I can throw back to Cliff. Well, I have a lot of questions. Let's start with the easy ones. How many people are involved in the cryptocurrencies, if you know, Cliff?
You mean in general across the planet?
Yeah.
I don't know. It would be very difficult to say. I would estimate probably in the millions.
Okay.
And, you know, there's probably millions in the U.S. and maybe tens of millions in China. It's a little opaque. You name a country, I can give you some estimation of where the cryptos are hot in that country and this sort of thing because of my role. But let's examine a few of your points here, okay? I don't think government's going to shut it down. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, but before we do that, Paladin, you know, I just want to say that if you have anything else to say, you should sort of say it. And if not, then we're going to move on, because I have a number of questions that I want to expand upon. And Cliff talked for quite a while. Do you have issues with anything he said? I do want to say that because I know you, and I also know my own contacts, that you are getting some back channel information saying there's no way. In fact, this is not conjecture. This is information you're getting that's direct, that is saying that they are going to interfere with it. It's just a matter of how. And then the question becomes, how can they? And I think you also have to divide out certain parts of this idea of crypto, because there is the blockchain. There's also IOTA, which is the Internet of Things, is kind of where it comes from. But there's I don't even know what you call it, but IOTA is like a coin, and that it doesn't use the same technology as blockchain. So there are a couple of what you call currencies or coins or whatever you want to call them that are posing possible counter moves, if you will, to the blockchain technology, from my understanding. And I've been trying to obviously educate myself on a lot of this stuff. And I think it's quite fascinating what the whole sector is yielding. Then we are going to get into the artificial intelligence. What does it mean? And I just listened to somebody who talked specifically with regard to Ethereum and how that somehow is an open door for being modified and or interacting with artificial intelligence, and that being a certain kind of, and Cliff, I appreciate your desire to define our terms, and we can do that. But so these are the directions we're going to go. We have, limited time, as I appreciate. I hope you appreciate that. And we also have people that are probably going to want to ask some good questions in the chat. So Paladin, I need you to either finish what you're going to say or say what you have to say, because this is your chance to kind of lay out your position if you have one. And
okay,
not for you to question Cliff, but for you to make statements of your own, assuming you've done your own research in this area.
Well, I have done some research, not near as much. I can't catch up in a week or two. So, I mean, I've done what I can. I just, my overall feeling is that they're going to, this is direct competition with the powers that be. The powers that be, their power comes from their ability to control the financial system, because we all need money to survive, to pay bills, to eat, everything. So that is where their power derives from. And so cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all the ones that are out there are a direct shot at their power. And so they're not going to sit back and let it happen without doing something. So I can start there. As I go through and do research to see how they treat it from a tax standpoint, they don't treat it as a currency. They specifically say it's not a currency when in actuality it is. So that tells me that they're going to do something at some point in time. My questions that I had for Cliff were to get an idea of where we are on the timeline as far as how much longer it's going to take before the cryptocurrencies are win, I guess, because I think that's what Cliff is saying. And what I'm trying to do is get an idea of how long it's going to be before they win, because that tells me how long the bad guys have to essentially screw up the deal or take control of it or torch it. So because
okay, I also want you to address what is in essence the BRICS position on this, because the BRICS were posing quite a substantial counter to the dollar, and Cliff's premise is that that this is coming around just as the dollar is obviously going, you know, south. And so in other words, there is also the role of the Vatican and various other bodies out there that may or may not want to get involved. Now, we already know, and let me just say this, we do know, and Paladin, you and I have discussed this, and so you know that the government, or whatever you want to call that, there's a similar phenomenon going on, I think, or a possibility for that phenomena, which has to do with what Microsoft did in the early days, basically of the sort of tech boom, which is eventually they hoovered up all the small companies, took them over, and then put their own brand name on it. So in essence, they don't necessarily want to kill it, they'll just take it over. And they're already invested in, I forget the name of it, but there's a couple coins, and there's also some kind of mining operation in Texas, a data mining operation, if I understand it correctly, that they're already involved in, and it's got a name, and I don't remember the initials for it. Maybe Cliff knows. But so we do know that they're not, it's not like they're not going to work with these, this sort of, in this sector, this crypto sector. I think there's reason to know already that they're definitely going to get involved, and they're probably getting involved in a bigger and bigger way all the time. The question is, do they take it over the way they're used to doing, in a sort of monopoly way, the way YouTube has taken over sort of the video scene, and so on. In other words, that's the normal way that they sort of make their presence known. So they make it cheaper, easier, and better and faster for you to deal with them. Now, there are some problems with cashing out of your coins. From what I understand, the technology is fairly slow, and this is where IOTA comes in.
No. Sorry, Carrie, that's wrong. IOTA is an Internet of Things that runs on a blockchain. The idea is it's a clone of basically the Ethereum blockchain. Ethereum allows their blockchain to be cloned. Let's stop for a second. Let me describe the landscape, okay? Let's consider this into basic two categories: coins and tokens. Coins are currency and money that run on a blockchain. The blockchain is the train rails. The coins are the train, or what the train carries. And so it's just the blockchain is just simply a communication vehicle. It's a little bit of code that runs on all of these servers that operates to keep and all coins, all cryptos are a transaction. They're a ledger. It's nothing more than, and this is why Paladin should really get behind this, go and read the specifications for what Bitcoin actually is, and you'll discover it's nothing more than a distributed ledger that uses a consensus pattern across a network to ensure you don't need trust, to ensure that the miners are there constantly trying to make a crypto, make a Satoshi by mining faster. And what we're after is consensus. And so all of these guys always have to agree on who has that amount of coins in order for this system to work. It does work. Going to Paladin's question, we've passed the point of no return. That occurred in early 2016. Cryptocurrencies have already won. We're in a hyperinflation situation very similar to the 1920s in Germany. That's why Bitcoin is now $7,000. It's not that Bitcoin is worth any more than it was when it first came out. It's that the dollar is worth so much less. If you bought $1 worth of Bitcoin back when Bitcoin came out, that might have given you 10,000 coins and you'd be a multimillionaire now. Not because Bitcoin is any scarcer. We've actually made a number of them. but it has a finite limit and a finite way of making itself such that there's no inflation of Bitcoin allowed past 21 million coins by the algorithm. The algorithms and stuff are all open source. They all work with us. I dispute that AI exists. It's a marketing slogan where companies say AI and they're really talking about a thing called an expert system. I've written expert systems. That's what all of this software was called in the 70s, where you take the knowledge out of a diagnostician or a doctor and you put it into a whole bunch of if then, this then, this then, this then, or else that kind of statements. And it just runs so fast that you think that it's actually sort of thinking if you're not really paying attention to what's going on. So AI as such doesn't exist. It's not that like any software is out there running on its own, can alter its own code or any of that business and alter Bitcoin. So the landscape is that we've got coins. That would be these networks: Bitcoin's blockchain, Ethereum blockchain, Litecoin, Monero, Cloak, and a few of these others. Then there's about 2,500 tokens. Tokens are exchangeable products that can be exchanged for coins. Tokens represent an investment in a specific company. So a specific company might be devising a way to spend your cryptocurrencies using a credit card, because that's what everybody understands is swipe it to pay for it, wave it at the machine to pay for it. So why should cryptos be any different? And so in fact, people make a way of making plastic cards that you can spend your cryptos. They need some funding to develop the software, get the machines made, stamp all the cards and so on. So they have what's known as an ICO, initial coin offering. And that is the functional equivalent of an IPO, which is what the banks used to do. So already cryptos have eaten banks' lunch. They've taken the IPO market away from the banks, but the banks can't care so much anymore because the dollar is dying. Their costs were so high that nothing was working. The whole stock market system is basically just being held there static while we try and get some money out of it and put it into the crypto world. So there is no alternative to cryptocurrencies absent a gold and silver Mad Max world. The bankers all know this. If you happen to pay attention to personnel records, you'll see bankers in this middle tier of management deserting banks like mad to go off and form crypto companies because they know where the future is. So there's a for sure sign that the system is not going to be regulated to death, overhauled, and it can't be overtaken. It can't be taken over because it's distributed. That's the whole beauty of this system. You can go out and find some miners in China, arrest them, shoot them, and harvest their livers, but the crypto mines will appear in Jamaica or in Indonesia because there's an economic incentive for people to mine cryptos. And so a crypto mine is just a computer that runs a node on the network, and it processes this distributed ledger and reconciles it with all the other computers. And it says, hooray, I did it faster than all the other computers. I get the reward. But in doing so, it reconciles that ledger and maintains its integrity so that we don't have to trust this. And because it's decentralized, because it's distributed, it's like the internet itself. You can't kill it. And so basically what we're looking at is a continuation of your favorite subject, UFOs, okay? As bizarre as this may sound, what we're involved in right now, you and I, this discussion among the three of us and what we're discussing directly stems from what occurred in 1947. Because when that spaceship crashed or was brought down, those technologies that they took out of it, fiber optics, 3D printing, mutable metals, all different kinds of software creations, all of that stuff has now been integrated into our society. Transistors, integrated circuit chips, computers, all of that stuff. My whole life, I've been working on the humanized version of alien technology. Now we've taken that step thing one more leap, and that is that we humans invented this kind of software, and now we're taking software and we're making software our money and our currency. But it all stems back to 1947 when we went from analog into digital. And this is like the culmination of it. Just at the point where they're starting to release real alien technology in the back channels. And so the people that are doing that, the deep state, they don't give a fig about the bankers. If the bankers get in the way, they just kill them. They don't care about them. What they care about is the perpetuation of humanity, and they know that our solution now is cryptocurrencies. And that's why it's getting the tacit approval that it has. If they wanted to shut down cryptocurrencies, they would have done it in 2011. Okay, when cryptos first started trading, they would have capitalized on it in a serious way in 2013. They could easily say it's money laundering and shut down all the exchanges in the United States overnight. In fact, many of those exchanges won't work in Washington state because Washington state imposes too much of a reporting burden on them. And yes, there's 2,500 cryptocurrencies now. They're in the general sense. Most of them are tokens. Most of those are individual companies inventing new technology, like the ability to spend your cryptos on a credit card or any number of things. And you're making an investment in this ICO into an individual company. There are the currencies that you can buy, and those currencies are appreciating in dollar value because the dollar is dying and because their technical worth in the world is escalating as more and more companies get on the crypto bandwagon and start getting the efficiencies of these distributed systems. Because the distributed and decentralized system is so much more efficient than the old hierarchical manner in which we used to do business, we're flopping our entire social order out of the pyramidical hierarchical form into a flattened distributed mechanism for all of us to live in, just as we're going into the age of Aquarius, and it's all working. And yes, the bankers and all these people are throwing fits, but we're actually beating them. Every time something comes up, there's a new workaround, there's software, it's flexible, and software has eaten money in a conceptual sense. And at this stage, the bankers, the smart ones, are bailing on the banks, bailing on all of it, and trying to start their own cryptocurrency companies and do this sort of thing. So now in March of next year, my data says we'll have 10,000 tokens out there. And then maybe by the end of next year, we might have 400,000 tokens out there, different kinds of different companies needing investments. I've been doing interviews with a bunch of these companies that are doing ICOs. Because I understand software, I understand the blockchain, I know it's not useful for doing things like acting as a streaming source. It just does not make any sense to use the blockchain that way. But I'm able to go on in because I'm seeing a lot of stuff and making a valid recommendation or do an interview and pull out information on this. And so I've been talking to people in Russia, been talking to people in South Africa, all of this kind of thing about their various different approaches to using the blockchain. So it's global, it's already succeeded. Also, any banker worth anything only has to look south to Venezuela and say, if we don't do something, that's the United States in 2 years. And right now, the only thing keeping Venezuela going is people doing Bitcoin mining. And you can do Bitcoin mining, albeit inefficiently, on some really old, ancient, creaky equipment if you have to. So it's just kind of a different world here. Now, when you start talking cryptocurrencies and you say things like IOTA is the Internet of Things. It's not really functional. It's not really doing anything.
No, actually, Cliff, I don't know if you really know what IOTA is, because I'm not saying IoT, I'm saying IOTA. It's
sure,
a
that's
certain
the stock
kind of
for Internet of, yeah.
It's
and
not.
It's a cryptocurrency.
It is not blockchain technology. I've listened to lectures by techies, and they insist that it is not the same as blockchain.
It's a distributed ledger technology that uses a different consensus algorithm.
Right.
And just like you'll hear the word hash graph. Hash graph is going to be the next Bitcoin, next blockchain.
They're having problems with people trying to get out of their cryptos. From what I understand, there is some kind of a slowdown because they don't have, this is what IOTA is trying to address. And it is more distributive from what I understand. And you know, I'm just saying that
but it's just one of the 2,500
who runs the company.
It's a company.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's a certain one.
Right. And there's like, I get a dozen requests to do interviews with CEOs a day. And so I hear all the time, here Skycoin says they've got the original Satoshi vision re-engineered and they're faster and better than Bitcoin. Hashgraph says we're the next thing, we're going to take the load off, etc. And Bitcoin is slow, it's clunky. We're having forks on it all the time. Software is going to be re-engineered and so on. IOTA may not exist in a year. They may fail to cross that biological barrier of making a good business model out of their ideas. I think actually maybe 80% of all of the cryptocurrencies, crypto tokens that are out there now will come under pressure over this next year, and we may indeed see quite a few of them crash out. And it has nothing to do with anybody trying to shut them down or any of that. It has to do with just natural business cycles.
Okay, are you familiar with the moves the government is making, though, to get into, there's one that starts with a Z, I think, that they've gotten into in a big way.
Zcash and some of these others?
No, it's something else, something like Zircon.
Okay, well, there's 2,500 of them, so it's hard to keep track of them.
I'm sorry.
But also to that effect, in the United States, they're treated as a capital gains investment. You can report a loss if you take a loss when you sell. You can report a gain if you take a gain. You have to pay 50% or whatever your capital gains is on that particular item. There's the reinvestment. So they're treating it as though it was any other form of an equity or a security. Now, the security industries are dying. I don't know if you've noticed, but there used to be some 40,000 analysts employed in the banking world that did analysis of companies trying to do new IPOs and stuff. They fired almost all of that 40,000 cadre. No one read their reports. They were useless. The stock market kept going up anyway. And so 40,000 bankers were moved out. So the whole system of the whole idea of a monolithic banker cabal that's going to destroy us all and take over this whole thing is pretty ludicrous. And plus, bear in mind, from my perspective, this is part of disclosure. And the deep state buried in the holes in the ground in Area 51, they're not going to let the banks get in their way. They've got an agenda here. Now, my agenda is I want to live a long time, and I don't want to live in a Mad Max world. So I'm all for the cryptos and their approach to this, because I know they're cutting the bankers off at the knees.
Well, I
because
think
you can't control them.
I mean, let me just say that I think it would be superficial to think that we're not all on that page. Everyone wants to see, the people able to benefit and to move ahead and have a more abundant lifestyle, let's say, without having such a top-down society. So I think we can agree on that. What I'd like to do is, Paladin, you've heard a lot of talk back and forth here. You've been rather quiet. So do you have anything to add to what you've heard here in terms of your understanding and or your experience in the back end as an investigator in this very deep financial situation?
Okay, well, first of all, I think that, the original plan by the bankers, and, I would strongly assert that they run things, okay? I mean, from a human level, the ET level might be different, but they are basically running the earth, the bankers do, because we're on a debt system almost everywhere. So that gets everyone in debt. The countries are in debt. So, and I think we all know, anybody that's financially savvy know that the dollar is not going to last forever. It never does. And I don't think it was designed to. I think their original plan was to crash it and form the one world government, the one world currency. And they had all kinds of reasons to do that. The problem, reaction, solution scenario was going into play. They were going to split the US or the world into 7 geographic unions, like the European Union, the North American Union, the South American Union, and there were 2 or 3 others. And they were going to get that model in play, and then they were going to merge them all together. And in the meantime, they were going to crash the dollar. They were going to crash all the other currencies, take all the currencies down with them, because the dollar is the reserve currency. And if you crash that, you crash them all, essentially. So at some point in time, the Chinese saw what was going on and said, you know what, we're going to take over running the financial world. Now there's, mixed feelings about whether they're working with the old European bloodlines or whether they're doing this on their own. But, it's common knowledge that they're accumulating gold. They want to go to an asset-backed currency. So that's what's going on, on the surface. The cryptocurrencies, I think, have come in at an interesting time because, correct me if I'm wrong, but they have a lot of characteristics that the current system does. And I think we're all aware that they want to go to a cashless society for a lot of reasons that strengthens their control. One thing around the cryptos that bothers me is that they are a form of a cashless situation. So that's a little concerning. They aren't backed by anything like our fiat currency. And the one thing that sort of bothers me about this, from a pure currency or exchange medium of exchange standpoint is that Bitcoin is going up. And so if people are investing in Bitcoin for the upside, they're not using it for transactions. I think that part, Cliff, is kind of what bothers me, only from the standpoint that if they're going to accomplish what you feel it's a fait accompli, I think is what I'm hearing you say, then it would be better that they were using the currencies to transact commerce rather than use it as an investment, because if you use it as an investment, then there's not as much activity from a commerce standpoint as what there could be. So that part kind of concerns me as we go forward, because it's going to draw investments. It's going to draw, investors. It's going to draw money.
Maybe Cliff, if you don't mind muting yourself while Paladin is talking. I don't know where that sound is coming from. I was muted. Paladin, if you're rubbing up against the mic or hitting the mic in some form or fashion, that's also causing a scratching sound. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
So I will mute myself again. So continue, please.
Okay. So that's a part, Cliff, that sort of, bothers me, because I'm sort of a purist in the medium of exchange situation, and I would love to see, and that's what